show my landlord. I got all the damn drugs in the damn club. Bang club, she on my cheek in the bang club. She on my cheek in the bang club. I got all the damn drugs in the damn club. Coolin', damn drugs. Bang club, she on my cheek.
Remember in our recent video about the filthy secrets of Egyptian pharaohs?
Centuries and Egyptian beliefs.
This video will blow your minds. Love to travel to in Egypt.
Wow.
Look at the border of Sinai.
We're flipping way back into the past for this one. All the way back more than 1,000 years before Christ.
Are known, and instead Amenhotep IV, he becomes king.
Congratulations.
And steps to the throne and
Canceled multiple gods.
Akhenaten changed religion in the most fundamental way imaginable.
Of Akhenaten. Damn, did somebody say influencer? Pharaohs were almost always depicted as super macho.
I love it.
Akhenaten wanted to be shown as both masculine and feminine. Wide hips, breastises, and luscious lips. Totally different look. And that ass, though.
He's trying to represent something that is very
prove that actually happened. That being said, represents that although he is a man, since he does not reproduce in the eyes of the ancients, he should give up his role as a man. Lordham is also used to someone a man versus what made.
Take yourself back to ancient times. Just a walk from the river Nile. The pharaoh stands above all. He was the Ptolemaic dynasty. Macedonian in origin, the Ptolemies came to rule Egypt following the death of Alexander the Great in the 4th century BCE. At this time, intermarriage within the family, and particularly the union of brothers and sisters, was considered a way to consolidate power, and even a divine right by some. So common were the incestuous relationships of the Ptolemaic dynasty that Philadelphus was the nickname of Ptolemy II, thanks to marrying his sister Arsinoe II. And, Ptolemies? Married brothers and sisters.
Priests used a little bit of magic for the transformation. Egyptian methods to swap genders vary significantly when compared to today's more scientific gender reassignment procedures. That is to say, they were a bit more magical and a lot less grounded in science. The priest would paint the coffin of the dead woman red and then write inscriptions using masculine pronouns on the coffin shell. Since red was a typically masculine color, it was believed that use of it could genetically alter one's natural anatomy. Feminism changed the way we study female mummies. For many years, scientists and researchers were perplexed by the female mummies. They'd initially written off the male trappings on coffins as accidental occurrences, but those would have been egregious mistakes committed by both priests and surviving family members. An exhibit at the Brooklyn Museum featuring a collection of female mummies and artifacts points out that feminism may have been the key to demanding deeper research on the subject. Curator of Egyptian art Edward Bleiberg offered strong sentiments on the subject. Feminism has changed the questions we ask of ancient history as well as the answers we offer. This is a striking example of how feminism has provided a basis for new scholarship that reinterprets an ancient puzzle. It seems as if ancient Egyptians may have had an enlightened attitude about sexual experiences. From the ancient texts and hieroglyphics that researchers have discovered, it seems as if the Egyptians had a pretty open mindset about sex. We don't know much about their opinions on homosexuality, and we know even less about their views on transsexual and intersex individuals. Either way, they didn't see the temporary changing of the sexes as problematic. It guaranteed safe passage to the afterlife, and that's what counts.
And they created a hybrid religion, which they all voted on at a vote called the Council of Nicaea. And they created Christianity, which means Christian unity. And they actually voted on which signs and symbols and knowledge that they would use from places that they stole and learned from other places, aka Africa. So now they give you the story of Abraham, when Abraham is really the Pharaoh Akhenaten from Egypt. When Abraham is really the Pharaoh Akhenaten from Egypt.
I am Amenhotep IV, also known as Akhenaten. I married my eldest daughter, Meritaten, and also married my next eldest daughter, Akhenaten, also known as Akhenaten. Some historians report that I had a child with my daughter Akhenaten when she was 13 years old. Then, I had this same daughter, Akhenaten, marry my son, who who was her stepbrother, King Tut, for my second wife so that when Tut became king, Akhenaten would be queen. It was common for Egyptian royalty to marry within the family. Born around 1353 BCE, I was the son of Pharaoh Amenhotep III and Queen Tai. I was married to the beautiful Nefertiti, and we had 6 daughters together. She was unable to produce a male heir for me, but my second wife birthed King Tutankhamun. I adopted the name Akhenaten, symbolizing my devotion to the sun deity Aten. I am the first pharaoh to promote the worship of one God, and I was actually the founder of the Judeo-Christian religion.
I'm God. I'm God. I'm Christ. Proof I'm not.
She was first. She is God. The black woman is.
That's not true. The first being was not a black woman. It was a hermaphrodite. The notion of gender complexity is deeply rooted in the ancient Egyptian culture. In the Egyptian story of creation of the gods, the first god is male and female, and his name was Atum. Read that again. The first being was a hermaphrodite, not a black woman, but a black hermaphrodite, a male and female in one. We came at the same time. There is no one without the other. The black woman is not God alone, and the black man is not God alone. God is both masculine and feminine.
From there on out,
the first transgender queen in history. Ancient Egyptian Queen Hatshepsut presented herself as a male pharaoh so that people didn't question her authority and power.
The ancient Egyptian civilization, indigenously known as Kemet, punctuated by their exquisite artwork and architecture, has captivated the attention.
Oh, I hate really showing people what I want to get in a
hairstyles in ancient Egypt. The ancient Egyptian
4,400 years ago, in the middle of the 5th dynasty of ancient Egypt at Saqqara, a tomb was built for what would become one of the most famous same-sex couples in ancient history. Or were they? The discovery of this tomb sparked mayhem.
This representation of when they actually
currently there's a huge debate going.
This video. Later in 325 AD, what Constantine them did was they said we have to what they did was they shut down and made it illegal to teach any traditional Egyptian practices.
What do you mean by that?
The gods of creation were male. In Egyptian mythology, all of the gods who have the power to create life are masculine, which makes creation stories about the birth of other gods and the human race a bit confusing. Gods like Atum, Osiris, and Re had access to the kind of power needed to bring forth new divine beings, and in some stories women weren't involved in the process at all. One legend involves Atum having sex with himself and then sneezing to create life. In order to be reborn into the next world, you had to be a man. Because the gods of creation were all men, the ancient Egyptians naturally assumed that to be reborn or regenerated into the next kingdom they would need to be male as well. They wanted to reflect the image of the gods in an attempt at a better afterlife. This was fine for men but was a bit more challenging for women.
In a transgender pharaoh of Egypt, Hatshepsut's story begins like many royal Egyptian.
Yo, hey kids. It's so funny when people point to ancient cultures and they are trying to make it look like the rise of transgenderism is something new. When many ancient cultures had room for gender non-conforming folk. They had language for them. They were often revered. They were like the shamans and they were the leaders. When you look at the LGBTQIA, have you ever seen it when it has like the 2+? You should look into that 2+. Using ancient Egypt as an example is really funny. Now, can we say that they looked at gender in the same way that we do or use the same words or the same language? Of course not. But they did have a language for a third gender, for people that did not fit the binary. There was also a pharaoh that was female but was often described using male pronouns.
Where do non-binary people come from? Dunno. It all starts in Mesopotamia. When was that? 2000 BC. 2000 BC! This civilization was the earliest records of humanity. There are references to types of people who are neither male or female, and the records describe how God created these people, their roles in society, and words for different kinds of them. At the same time, let's skip over to ancient Egypt, shall we? Who also described 3 genders: male, female, and Sekhet. Let's spin the globe one more time, shall we? And we'll go to Southern Asia.
Is this around the same sort of time?
This is actually a little bit later. This was around 400 BC. There are the earliest records of the Hijra people. The Hijra consider themselves to be neither male or female. As a whole entire civilization? Yeah, and they still exist, the Hijra people, although oppressed they are. Next, we have 7th century BC. These are my favourites. The Scythians, who were Eurasian nomadic horse riders. Who apparently... You're making this up. Who apparently honoured gender non-conforming people as priests and warriors. They apparently also invented the earliest known hormone therapy using licorice root. Wow, just get me licorice root out. Pre-colonial Native Americans, let's spin that bloody globe again, shall we? Who historically recognised various kinds of genders that all fall under the umbrella of two-spirit, which just encompasses the different kinds of genders that they had in the communities that don't fit in the Western gender binary. Now, post-Christ, 1st century, the year 100, there are records stating that classical Judaism actually recognised 6 genders. I can't tell you more information about that because I don't know it. Anglo-Saxon, when did they start recognising non-binary people? The roots of you and I, the British. Because in the 11th century, there was a word found called weapon rifestra, which meant woman with a weapon, which also people believed to be woman with a penis, and may have been a word used to describe queer, intersex, non-binary folk back in the 11th century of Britain. So it's not a new thing at all? It's ancient. It's ancient, baby. It goes as far back as time as we know.
Look at how ancient Egyptian women had sex changes when they died to become transgender mummies. Ancient Egyptian mummies have fascinated the world for centuries, and Egyptian beliefs about the afterlife are just as intriguing. But when researchers look at mummies, one thing stands out more than others. The vast majority of the deceased seem to be male. One wonders if women were really that underrepresented in society. The truth is that female mummies underwent a special step while preparing for their transition to the afterlife. Women were allowed into the next world, of course, but only if they were transformed into men first.
What?
Ancient Egyptian beliefs hold that only men had the power to regenerate themselves and enter the afterlife, so the ladies were given a bit of a makeover, so to speak. The role of gender and the power of sex had a strong influence in Egyptian life and just as strong an influence in death. Ancient Egyptians cut off the hands and genitalia of their enemies. The ancient Egyptians believed that men possessed all the power to regenerate and reproduce the human race, not women. Women were simply vessels. There didn't seem to be a very secure understanding of biology in those days because they also believed that a man could reproduce asexually if he desired. It was for this reason that Egyptians removed the hands and genitals of their enemies posthumously. They wanted to make it impossible for the deceased to touch themselves into regeneration.